The arrow punched through Mara's shoulder from behind, and she stumbled forward into the river, the icy water swallowing her scream as blood bloomed dark against the current. She clawed at the rocks, trying to gain purchase, but her clan's voices rose behind her in a chant she had heard only twice before the death song. They sang when a warrior fell beyond saving. Her own mother's voice carried strongest among them, high and keening, declaring her daughter lost to the waters and the wounds that would surely claim her. Mara wanted to cry out that she still lived, that the arrow had missed her heart, but the current dragged her under, and the words dissolved into bubbles that broke uselessly at the surface. The water carried her far downstream, tumbling her over rocks and through rapids until her body felt like one massive bruise. She did not know how long she drifted, only that when she finally managed to drag herself onto a muddy bank, the sun had moved from its zenith to late afternoon. Her shoulder burned with a fire that seemed to consume her entire left side, and when she reached back with trembling fingers, she felt the arrow shaft still embedded in her flesh. Breaking it off would hurt, leaving it would kill her. She chose pain over death and bit down on a piece of driftwood as she snapped the wooden shaft, the sound of it cracking nothing compared to her muffled shriek. She lay in the mud for a time that felt both endless and instantaneous, watching clouds drift across the sky and wondering if this was how death came, not in battle with glory and witnesses, but alone in the muck with only birds as company. Her clan believed her dead already. They had sung the death song. In their eyes, she had ceased to exist the moment she vanished beneath the water. Even if she returned, even if she somehow survived, they would not see her. She would be a ghost, a walking shame, proof that their judgment had been wrong. Better to truly die than to return and be nothing. But her body, stubborn and strong despite the wound, refused to surrender. Her heart kept beating. Her lungs kept drawing air. And as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting everything in shades of amber and gold, Mara forced herself to her feet and stumbled away from the river into a landscape she did not recognize. The land here was gentler than her clan's territory in the mountains. The trees grew in orderly lines rather than wild clusters, and the underbrush had been cleared in places to reveal paths worn smooth by frequent use. She followed one such path because walking aimlessly seemed as good as any plan, and because the trail sloped upward away from the river's dampness. Her vision blurred and sharpened in turns, and she could not tell if the growing darkness came from twilight or from the blood loss that made her thoughts feel fuzzy and distant. When she saw the farmhouse, she thought at first it might be a hallucination. It sat in a cleared valley, surrounded by fields that had been recently harvested, the stubble of cut grain poking up through the earth in neat rows. A barn stood beside the house, its doors closed against the coming night, and smoke rose from the chimney in a thin gray line. Light glowed in the windows, warm and golden and utterly foreign to Mara, who had never lived anywhere with glass panes and lanterns. Her clan dwelled in caves and temporary shelters, moving with the seasons and the herds. This place spoke of permanence, of someone who had put down roots and intended to stay. She should have turned away, should have hidden in the forest and tried to tend her own wounds. Humans hated orcs, and orcs hated humans, and the fact that she had been shot by her own people did not change the centuries of bloodshed between the races. But the wound in her shoulder pulsed with each heartbeat, sending fresh waves of agony down her arm and across her back, and she could feel fever beginning to set in, making her skin feel too tight and her thoughts too loose. She needed help. Pride and caution were luxuries for the healthy. Mara walked toward the farmhouse on unsteady legs, leaving a trail of blood drops behind her in the dirt. She made it as far as the porch steps before her knees buckled, and she caught herself on the railing with her good arm, breathing hard through the pain. The front door seemed impossibly far away, though it could not have been more than a few paces. She reached for it anyway, stretching out her hand, and the movement pulled at her wound in a way that made bright spots dance across her vision. The door opened before she could touch it, and a man stood silhouetted in the lamplight, his frame filling the doorway. He was tall for a human, broad-shouldered and solid, with brown hair that fell past his collar and a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes widened when he saw her, but he did not reach for a weapon, did not shout or slam the door shut. Instead, he looked at the arrow wound in her shoulder, at the blood soaking her leather tunic, at the way she swayed on her feet, and he stepped forward with his hands raised in a gesture that might have been meant to calm a spooked horse. "Easy now," he said, his voice low and steady. "You are hurt bad." Mara tried to speak, to explain or beg or simply tell him she meant no harm, but her tongue felt thick and clumsy in her mouth. The words came out in her clan's language, harsh and guttural, and she saw him frown as he tried to make sense of them. Then the porch tilted sideways, or perhaps she fell, and everything went dark. She woke to pain and lamplight and the smell of something sharp and medicinal. Her first instinct was to fight, to lash out at whatever held her down, but her body refused to obey. She could barely lift her head, let alone swing a fist. Slowly, details resolved themselves into sense. She was lying on her stomach on a wooden table, stripped to the waist, with a blanket draped across her lower back for modesty. The human man stood beside her, holding a curved needle threaded with what looked like fishing line, and he was stitching close the wound in her shoulder with careful, practiced movements. "You are awake," he said when he noticed her watching him. "Good. I was worried. You lost a lot of blood." Mara tried to push herself up, but he placed a gentle hand on her back, keeping her still. "Do not move yet. I am almost finished. The arrow went through clean, which is good. No fragments left inside, but the stitching needs to hold or you will tear it open again." She did not understand all his words, but his tone was calm, matter of fact, and his touch was careful rather than rough. He was helping her. The realization came slowly, filtered through pain and exhaustion. This human was helping her, even though she was an orc, even though her people and his had been enemies for as long as anyone could remember. She watched him work, watched the lamplight catch in his brown eyes and highlight the concentration on his face, and she did not know what to think or feel. When he tied off the final stitch and cut the line, he stepped back and examined his work with a critical eye. "It will scar, but it should heal well if you keep it clean and do not do anything stupid. I will make a poultice to draw out infection." He moved around the room, gathering jars and herbs from shelves that lined one wall, and Mara realized they were in some kind of workroom or storage area, rather than the main house. Dried plants hung from the rafters, and the shelves held everything from preserved foods to tools to medical supplies. The man worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before, grinding herbs in a mortar and mixing them with what smelled like honey and vinegar. "I served in the border wars," he said without looking at her, as if reading her unspoken question. "Learned field medicine because too many men died waiting for a proper surgeon. Figured the skills would be useful on a farm too. Animals get hurt. People get hurt. Same principles apply." He returned with the poultice and spread it across her shoulder, his touch gentle despite the size and calluses of his hands. The mixture was cool against her fevered skin, and almost immediately she felt some of the burning pain recede. He bandaged over it with clean linen, wrapping the cloth around her shoulder and across her chest to hold it in place. "There," he said. "That is the best I can do. The rest is up to you and your body. You need rest, water, and food when you can stomach it. Mara pushed herself up slowly, testing her strength, and found she could sit upright if she moved carefully. The blanket fell away, and she clutched it to her chest, suddenly aware of her nakedness in a way she had not been while unconscious. The man turned away immediately, giving her privacy, and she felt a flush of something that might have been shame or gratitude spread across her face. "Your clothes were soaked with blood and river water," he said, still facing away. "I have some old shirts that might fit you. They will be too big, but better than nothing." He rummaged in a chest and pulled out a faded linen shirt, which he held out behind him without turning around. Mara took it and struggled into it one-handed, biting back a gasp as the movement pulled at her stitches. The shirt hung on her like a dress, falling past her hips, but it was clean and dry and smelled faintly of soap and sunshine. "I am decent," she said in his language, the words awkward and heavily accented but comprehensible. He turned back and a small smile touched his mouth. "You speak the common tongue. Some. My clan," she stopped, remembering that her clan had declared her dead, that she had no clan anymore. "I learned from traders, a little." "What is your name?" he asked. Mara opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Her name was her clan's name, given to her by her mother in the traditional ceremony when she had survived her first winter. To speak it now, when she had been declared dead, felt wrong, felt like a lie. She was not Mara anymore. Mara had drowned in the river and someone else had crawled out. "I do not have a name," she said finally. The man frowned. "Everyone has a name." "Not anymore. I am dead to my people. The name died with me." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if trying to read the story written there. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand. I am Lucas Payne. This is my farm. You are welcome to stay here while you heal, but if you need a name, we should pick one." "You choose," Mara said. The words felt strange, giving a human the power to name her, but everything about this situation was strange. She was already further from her old life than she had ever imagined traveling. Lucas considered, rubbing his jaw. "How about Vera? It means truth in the old language. Seems fitting for someone starting over." "Vera," she repeated, testing the sound of it. It felt foreign on her tongue, but no more foreign than anything else in this impossible night. "Yes, that is good. Vera it is then." He gestured toward the door that led deeper into the house. "Can you walk? You should lie down properly. That table cannot be comfortable." She slid off the table slowly, testing her legs, and found they held her weight though they trembled with exhaustion. Lucas offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it, letting him steady her as they walked through a short hallway into a bedroom. The room was simple but clean, with a large bed covered in quilts, a wardrobe, and a window that looked out onto the dark fields. "This is your room?" Vera asked. "It is the only bed," Lucas said. "I will sleep in the barn. You need proper rest more than I do." "No, I cannot take your bed." "I will sleep in the barn. You can barely stand and you have a hole in your shoulder. You are sleeping in the bed and that is final." His tone brooked no argument, and Vera was too tired to fight. She sank onto the mattress, and it felt softer than anything she had ever experienced, like laying on a cloud. Lucas pulled the quilts up over her, tucking them in with an almost maternal care that made her throat tighten unexpectedly. "Sleep," he said. "I will check on you in the morning. If you need anything during the night, call out. I will hear you from the barn." "Why are you helping me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Lucas paused in the doorway, looking back at her. The lamplight cast his face in half shadow, making it hard to read his expression. "Because you needed help and I could give it. Does there need to be more reason than that? We are enemies. Humans and orcs. Maybe. But you are not an army or a raiding party. You are one injured woman who showed up on my doorstep. I am not going to leave you to die because of what other people did to each other." He shifted his weight, as if uncomfortable with the conversation. "Get some rest, Vera. Things will look better in the morning." He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Vera lay in the dark listening to his footsteps fade away. She should have been planning her next move, figuring out where she would go once she healed, but her thoughts kept circling back to the gentle way he had stitched her wound, the careful way he had bandaged her, the fact that he had given up his bed for her comfort. She had been taught that humans were cruel, treacherous, and cold, that they killed orcs on sight and celebrated the slaughter. But Lucas Payne had shown her more kindness in a few hours than she had received from her own clan in the days before they shot her. The contradiction made her head hurt worse than the fever did. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion drag her down into dreamless sleep. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of pain, fever, and gradually returning strength. Lucas checked her wound twice daily, changing the bandage and applying fresh poultice, and each time he declared it was healing well. No signs of infection. She should consider herself lucky. He brought her food simple fare of bread and soup and occasionally eggs, and sat with her while she ate, making quiet conversation about the farm and the weather, and carefully avoiding any questions about her past. She learned that he had bought the farm 5 years ago with money saved from his time in the army, that he grew wheat and barley and kept chickens and a milk cow, that he lived alone because his family had died in a plague when he was young. He spoke about these things plainly, without self-pity, as if loneliness was simply another aspect of farm life like early mornings and hard work. Vera told him less about herself, partly because the memories hurt and partly because she did not know what to say. How could she explain that her clan had declared her dead, not because of the arrow wound, but because of what came before? That she had spoken against the war chief's plan to raid a human village, had argued that attacking civilians was dishonorable, and had been named traitor for her words. The arrow had come during the argument, shot by someone in the crowd, and she had fled into the river not to escape the wound but to escape judgment. Her clan had let her go, had sung the death song, because it was easier than admitting one of their own might be right to question their ways. By the end of the first week, Vera could move around the house without help, though her shoulder still ached and her left arm remained weak. Lucas had returned to his work in the fields, leaving her to rest, but she found herself unable to simply lie in bed all day. Her clan had prized strength and contribution. An orc who could not pull their weight was a burden. So she began to help in small ways, washing the dishes Lucas left piled by the basin, sweeping the floors, folding the clean laundry he brought in from the line. The tasks were foreign to her, domestic in a way orc life never had been, but she learned quickly. Lucas noticed, of course. He came in for lunch one day to find the house tidied, and a pot of soup warming over the fire, made from vegetables she had found in his cold cellar and herbs she recognized from her clan's cooking. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the scene, and for a moment Vera, worried she had overstepped, had invaded his space in a way he had not invited. "You did not need to do this," he said finally. "I know. But I cannot only take, I must give something back." She ladled soup into bowls, hands steady despite her nervousness. "If it is wrong, I will stop. It is not wrong." He sat down at the table, looking almost bewildered. "It is just, I am not used to someone else being here. It has been a long time since this house felt like anything more than a place to sleep between work." They ate together, and the soup was good, not fancy, but hot and filling and flavored in a way that split the difference between human and orc cooking styles. Lucas had 2 bowls and complimented her on it, and Vera felt a small, warm glow of pride that surprised her with its intensity. Such a simple thing, making soup, yet it felt like an accomplishment worth savoring. After that, they fell into a routine. Lucas worked the fields and tended the animals, while Vera managed the house and prepared meals. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, and Lucas would read aloud from books he owned, adventure stories and histories, and sometimes poetry that made Vera's chest ache with its beauty, even when she did not understand all the words. She taught him some of her language in return, the words for common things like bread and water and home, and he repeated them with careful pronunciation, his accent atrocious but his effort genuine. Autumn deepened into early winter, and Vera's shoulder healed from an open wound to a pink scar, still tender but functional. She could use her left arm again, could lift and carry and work without pain shooting through her. She should have left. Should have moved on to wherever orcs without clans went. But Lucas never asked her to go, and she found herself reluctant to raise the subject. The farm had become comfortable, familiar, safe. More than that, Lucas had become someone she looked forward to seeing each day. She found herself listening for his footsteps on the porch, watching through the window as he worked in the fields, taking extra care with the meals she prepared, because she liked the way his face lit up when he tasted something particularly good. These feelings confused her. Orcs did not form attachments to humans. It went against everything she had been taught, violated every boundary her people held sacred. But her people had declared her dead and sent her away, so perhaps their rules no longer applied to her. One evening in late autumn, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Lucas set down his book and looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "I need to go into town tomorrow," he said, "to sell some grain and buy supplies for winter. You should stay here, keep out of sight." Vera stiffened. "Because I am an orc. Because people in town are not as understanding as they should be. They see an orc and they see an enemy, no matter the truth of it. I do not want you getting hurt because some fool decides to play hero. You are ashamed of me." The words tasted bitter. "No," Lucas leaned forward, his gaze intent. "I am trying to protect you. There is a difference. I do not care what you are, Vera. I care that you are safe. And taking you into town right now would not be safe." She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle whatever prejudice the townsfolk threw at her, but she knew he was right. She had seen the way humans looked at orcs during the war, the hatred, the fear, the disgust. Even if she meant no harm, even if she came peacefully, there were those who would attack first and never bother with questions. Lucas was trying to spare her that, and she could not fault him for it. "How long will you be gone?" she asked instead. "Just the day." "I will leave at dawn and be back by nightfall. You will be all right here alone. I have been alone before. Not like this, not in a house full of someone else's belongings with the scent of his soap and his cooking and his presence in every corner, but alone nonetheless. I will manage." Lucas left before sunrise, taking the wagon loaded with sacks of grain. Vera watched from the window as he drove away down the road, and the house felt immediately larger and emptier without him. She filled the day with work mending a shirt of his that had torn at the seam, baking bread from the last of the flour, cleaning corners that did not really need cleaning. Anything to keep busy, to keep from thinking about how much she missed his company after only a few hours. The sun was setting when she heard the wagon return, and she met Lucas at the door, taking some of the supply sacks from his arms. He looked tired but pleased, and he unloaded the wagon with her help, stacking bags of flour and salt and sugar in the pantry. "How was town?" she asked as they worked. Lucas hesitated, and she knew immediately that something had happened. "There was talk," he said finally. "Some trappers came in from the mountains. They said an orc clan is moving south away from their usual territory. People are worried about raids. Vera's blood went cold. Did they say which clan? They called them the Stone Ridge clan. Do you know them, Stone Ridge, her clan? The clan that had declared her dead. Vera set down the sack she was holding, her hand suddenly unsteady. That is my old clan. They are coming here, not here specifically, but closer to the border settlements. The trappers think they are looking for new hunting grounds, but some of the townsfolk are convinced it is a war party. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. They are talking about forming a militia, about striking first before the orcs can attack. It is all fear and bluster right now, but fear makes people stupid. If my clan finds me here, they will kill me, and they will kill you for sheltering me. Vera heard her voice shaking and could not stop it. I need to leave. I need to go before they come close enough to track me. Absolutely not. Lucas caught her shoulders, making her look at him. You are not running away because of rumors and fear. This is your home now, Vera. You belong here as much as I do. Lucas, you do not understand. They declared me dead. If they see me, they will make it true, and they will punish you for what they will see as desecrating my body by keeping it alive. Then we will deal with that if it happens. But I am not sending you away because of what might be. I will not do that. His grip on her shoulders tightened, not painfully but firmly. You are not alone anymore. You have me. We will face whatever comes together. Vera stared at him, at the determination in his eyes and the set of his jaw, and something in her chest cracked open. No one had ever fought for her before. Not her clan, not her family, not anyone. But this human man, this former soldier turned farmer, was willing to stand against her entire clan if necessary, to keep her safe. The realization was overwhelming, too large to process, and before she knew what she was doing, she was crying. Lucas pulled her into a hug, careful of her healing shoulder, and she buried her face against his chest and wept. He did not tell her to stop, did not try to shush her or minimize her fear. He just held her and let her cry, one hand stroking her hair, and she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to water. When the tears finally subsided, she pulled back enough to look at him, and found him watching her with an expression so tender it made her heart ache. I am sorry, she said. I did not mean to. Do not apologize. You have been through more than anyone should have to endure. You are allowed to feel it. You are a good man, Lucas Payne, better than I deserve. That is where you are wrong. You deserve every bit of kindness and then some. He reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, the gesture so gentle it made her want to cry again. I need to tell you something. I have been trying to figure out how to say it, and there never seems to be a right time, so I am just going to say it plainly. I care about you, Vera. More than I should, probably, and in ways that are complicated and probably foolish. But you deserve to know. You deserve to have a choice. Vera's heart hammered in her chest. She had suspected, had seen the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention, had felt the careful way he touched her when tending her wound as if she were precious. But hearing him say it, hearing him put words to the thing growing between them, made it real in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I care for you too, she whispered. I did not want to. I tried not to, but you make it impossible not to care. Lucas smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and lighter and full of hope. So what do we do about it? I do not know. This is not something my people do. Orcs and humans do not. We are not supposed to. I know, but we are not our people, are we? You are not your clan anymore, and I am just a farmer who stopped following other people's rules a long time ago. Maybe we get to make our own rules. Maybe, Vera said. And then she kissed him because she could not think of what else to do, because her words felt inadequate to express what she felt, because she had nearly died and been reborn, and she was tired of being afraid of wanting things. Lucas kissed her back with a hunger that spoke of long-suppressed need, his arms coming around her to pull her close. She melted into him, into the warmth and strength of his body, and for the first time since she had been shot and declared dead, she felt truly alive. They broke apart eventually, both breathing hard, and Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "We will figure this out," he said. "Whatever comes, we will face it together. I promise you that." "Together," Vera repeated, and the word felt like a vow. Winter arrived in earnest over the following weeks, bringing snow that blanketed the fields and turned the world white and hushed. Lucas taught Vera how to care for the animals in winter, how to break the ice on the water trough each morning and distribute hay to the chickens and the cow. She learned how to preserve food, how to make candles from tallow, how to do 100 small tasks that kept a farm running through the cold months. And in the evenings, after the work was done, they would curl up together by the fire, reading or talking or simply existing in comfortable silence. They were careful with each other, mindful of the newness and strangeness of what they were building. Lucas never pushed for more than she was willing to give, and Vera found herself opening up in ways she had never thought possible, sharing stories of her childhood and her clan, of the mother who had sung her death song without hesitation, and the friends who had turned away when the war chief demanded it. Lucas listened to all of it without judgment, and when she finished, he would hold her and tell her that their loss was his gain, and he would spend every day making sure she knew she was valued. It snowed the day the clan arrived. Vera was in the barn, feeding the chickens when she heard the war drums. The sound was unmistakable, a deep rhythmic beating that carried across the snowy fields like a heartbeat. She froze, grain scattering from her nerveless fingers, and for a moment she could not breathe. The drums were a call to assembly, used when the clan needed to gather for important matters or when battle was imminent. And they were close, too close, maybe only a mile away. She ran for the house, her feet slipping on the icy ground, and burst through the door to find Lucas pulling on his coat. "I heard," he said before she could speak. "Stay inside, lock the door, do not come out no matter what happens. No, if they are coming here, we face them together. You said that." Vera grabbed his arm, stopping him. "You promised we would face things together." "That was before your entire clan showed up on my doorstep. Vera, I can talk to them, maybe convince them to move on, but if they see you, if they see me, they will kill me, and then they will kill you for harboring me. You cannot talk your way out of this, Lucas. They will not listen." She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. "But maybe I can reach them. Maybe if I can talk to my mother, if I can explain, you said they declared you dead, they will not want to hear explanations." "I know, but I have to try. This is my fault. They are here because I lived, because somehow they found out or suspected. I cannot let you face them alone." Lucas looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, we go together, but you stay behind me, and if things go bad, you run, promise me." "Lucas, promise me, Vera. I need to know you will be safe." "I promise," she lied, because she knew she would not run if it came to that, would not leave him to face her clan's wrath alone. But he seemed satisfied with the answer, and they walked out into the snow together to meet whatever was coming. The clan emerged from the tree line like shadows given form, dozens of orcs clad in furs and leather, their green skins stark against the white snow. They carried weapons, axes and spears and bows, and their faces were hard with the cold and with purpose. At their head walked a tall orc woman with iron-gray hair and scars that told stories of a lifetime of battles. Vera's mother, the clan matriarch. The woman's eyes swept over the farm, over Lucas standing on his porch, and then froze when they landed on Vera. For a moment, nothing moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the matriarch's face twisted into something between rage and disbelief. "You," she said, her voice carrying across the distance. "You who were declared dead, you who we mourned and released to the spirits. You dare to walk among the living, to shame your clan with your existence." "Mother, please, let me explain," Vera started forward, but Lucas caught her hand, holding her in place. "This is my land," Lucas said, his voice steady and loud enough for all the assembled orcs to hear. "She is under my protection. If you have business with her, you will speak civilly, or you will leave." The matriarch laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "A human thinks to command the Stone Ridge clan. You have no authority here, farmer. That creature beside you is ours to deal with as we see fit. She has a name. Her name is Vera, and she is no creature. She is a person, and she has done nothing to deserve your hatred. She betrayed her clan, spoke against our war chief, fled from judgment. These are crimes that warrant death, human. Do not interfere in matters you do not understand." "I understand plenty," Lucas said. "I understand you shot her in the back and left her to die. I understand you declared her dead because it was easier than admitting she might have been right. I understand you are looking for an excuse to punish her for surviving when you wanted her gone." A murmur ran through the assembled orcs, and the matriarch's face darkened with anger. But before she could respond, another orc stepped forward, a young male Vera recognized as her cousin, Keth. He looked at Vera with something like wonder in his eyes. "You lived," he said. "The river did not take you, you survived." "I did," Vera said quietly. "Lucas found me and healed me. He gave me a new life when you declared my old one forfeit. Because you were a traitor," the matriarch snapped. "Because you put human lives above the clan." "I put innocent lives above vengeance," Vera countered, finding her voice and her courage. "The war chief wanted to raid a village, to kill children and elders who had nothing to do with the conflicts between our peoples. I said it was dishonorable. I said we were better than that, and you shot me for it. The clan voted," the matriarch said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. "The clan was afraid," Vera shot back. "Afraid to stand up to the war chief, afraid to question. So you let one person shoot me and then declared me dead, so you would not have to think about it anymore. But I am here. I am alive. And I am not going to let you pretend I do not exist just because it is easier for you." Silence fell over the clearing. Snow began to fall again, light flakes drifting down from a gray sky. The orcs looked at each other, uncertain, and Vera saw doubt creeping into faces that had been hard with purpose moments before. Keth spoke again, his voice carrying in the quiet. "The war chief is dead. He fell in battle 3 weeks ago. The clan has been wandering since, trying to decide where to go, what to do. Some said we should seek peace. Some said we should find new enemies. But no one could agree, and without a war chief to lead, we have been lost." The matriarch glared at him. "That is not for you to say, boy. But it is true, Aunt, and you know it. The clan is broken. We need something to believe in again, some purpose beyond endless fighting. Maybe," he looked at Vera, at Lucas, at the farmhouse behind them. "Maybe this is a sign. Maybe the fact that she lived, that a human helped her, means something." "It means nothing," the matriarch said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It means everything," Lucas said. "It means we do not have to be enemies. It means there is another way if we are brave enough to try it." "You ask too much," the matriarch said. "Centuries of blood are not erased by one act of kindness." "No, but they can be erased one act at a time," Vera said. "Mother, I know I hurt you. I know my words and my survival shame you, but I am asking you to let that go. I am asking you to see me, to really see me and to see him, and to understand that we are proof that things can be different." The matriarch stood silent for a long moment, her scarred face unreadable. Then, slowly, She walked forward through the snow until she stood at the base of the porch steps. Up close, Vera could see the age in her mother's eyes, the weariness that came from a lifetime of fighting and losing people, and trying to hold a clan together through sheer force of will. "You have your father's stubbornness," the matriarch said finally, "and his idealism. I thought the world had beaten it out of you, but I see I was wrong." "Does that mean?" Vera hardly dared to hope. "It means I am tired, child. Tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of losing people I love. If you have found a way to live that does not involve constant violence, then perhaps I was wrong to declare you dead. Perhaps the spirits kept you alive for a reason." She looked at Lucas, studying him with hard eyes. "You will keep her safe. You swear it." "With my life," Lucas said without hesitation. The matriarch nodded slowly. "Then I release you from the death song, Vera, who was my daughter. You are free to live as you choose. The clan will not trouble you." "What will you do?" Vera asked, her throat tight with emotion. "We will move on. Find somewhere to settle, perhaps. Try to build instead of destroy. It will not be easy and not everyone will agree, but Keth is right. We need a new path." She turned to go, then paused and looked back. "You have my blessing, child. Use it well." The clan withdrew as silently as they had come, melting back into the forest like ghosts. Keth lingered a moment longer, giving Vera a small smile and a nod before he followed. And then they were gone, and the clearing was empty save for the falling snow and the tracks they had left behind. Vera stood trembling, not from cold but from the weight of what had just happened. She had faced her clan, had spoken her truth, and had been released, acknowledged, given permission to exist. It felt like a dream, too good to be real, and she kept waiting to wake up and find it had all been a hallucination brought on by fever. Lucas pulled her into his arms, and she realized she was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief and joy and grief all mixed together, pouring out in great shaking sobs. He held her through it, whispering reassurances and pressing kisses to her hair, and eventually the storm passed, leaving her feeling wrung out but lighter than she had in months. "It is really over," she said, the words half question, half statement. "It is over," Lucas confirmed. "You are free, Vera, truly free." They went inside and Lucas built up the fire while Vera made tea with shaking hands. They sat together on the floor in front of the hearth, wrapped in blankets, and watched the flames dance. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the tracks and signs of the clan's visit, erasing the evidence until it was as if they had never been there at all. "What happens now?" Vera asked after a long silence. Now we keep living. We work the farm, we get through winter, and in spring we plant new crops. We make a life together if that is what you want." "It is what I want, more than anything. But Lucas, are you sure? Being with me will not be easy." "There will always be people who disapprove, who see me as a monster or you as a traitor to your own kind. Let them think what they want. I stopped living my life according to other people's opinions a long time ago. You are what I want, Vera, just you, exactly as you are." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and he responded with a tenderness that made her heart swell. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, until the fire burned down to embers and the room grew cold. Then they went to bed together, curling up under the quilts, and Vera fell asleep listening to the steady beat of Lucas's heart and feeling safer than she ever had in her life. Winter passed into early spring, and with the warming weather came new challenges and new joys. Lucas taught Vera how to plant seeds, how to prepare the fields, how to coax life from the soil. She learned quickly, her orcish strength and endurance making her an invaluable partner in the heavy work of farming. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, and in the evenings they would collapse exhausted but satisfied, sharing simple meals and simpler pleasures. Word of the orc woman living at the Payne farm spread through the town, as gossip always did in small communities. Some people were curious, some were hostile, and some were cautiously supportive. Lucas made a point of taking Vera with him on his next trip to town, introducing her to the shopkeepers and farmers he did business with, making it clear that she was staying, and that anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with him. There were a few tense moments. A drunk in the tavern called her a monster and reached for a weapon, only to find Lucas's fist in his face before he could draw it. A group of women crossed the street to avoid her, whispering behind their hands, but there were also unexpected kindnesses. The baker, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, gave Vera a loaf of bread and told her she was welcome in the shop any time. A young farmer named Thomas offered to help Lucas with the spring planting and shook Vera's hand without hesitation. Slowly, painfully, they carved out a place for themselves in the community. It was not perfect. There were still those who would never accept an orc among them. But there were enough who were willing to give Vera a chance, willing to see her as an individual rather than an enemy. And that was enough. As spring turned to summer, Vera began to think about the future in ways she never had before. She had survived when she should have died. She had found a home when she should have been wandering. She had fallen in love when she should have been alone. All of it felt like a gift, unearned but precious, and she wanted to hold on to it forever. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the fields they had planted together, Vera took Lucas's hand and held it tight. "I want to marry you," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "I know it is not traditional. I know there are no laws that cover orcs and humans marrying. But I want to stand in front of people and say that you are mine and I am yours. I want it to be official, real. I want the world to know." Lucas stared at her, his mouth slightly open in surprise. Then a grin split his face, wide and joyous. "Are you proposing to me? I suppose I am. Is that acceptable? Do human men prefer to do the asking?" "I do not care who does the asking. I only care about the answer, and my answer is yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." He pulled her close and kissed her deeply, and when they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. They were married a month later in a small ceremony on the farm. The local priest agreed to perform the rites after some persuasion from Lucas and a generous donation to the church. Vera wore a simple dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, white linen with green embroidery and patterns that echoed orcish traditional designs. Lucas wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair neatly trimmed and his face shining with happiness. A handful of people attended Thomas and his family, Mrs. Chen, a few other farmers and shopkeepers who had befriended them over the past months. It was not a large gathering, but it was filled with genuine warmth and good wishes. Even the priest, who had been skeptical at first, seemed moved by the obvious love between the couple. When Lucas slipped a simple iron ring onto Vera's finger and said his vows, his voice did not waver. "I promise to love you in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for as long as we both live. You gave me a reason to believe in something more than just surviving. You made this house a home and my life something worth living. I will cherish you every day, Vera Payne." Vera repeated the vows in turn, her accent thick with emotion but her words clear. "I promise to love you and stand with you, to work beside you and laugh with you and face whatever comes together. You gave me a new life when mine was taken away. You saw me when others turned away. You are my home, Lucas Payne, and I will love you until my last breath." They sealed the marriage with a kiss, and the small crowd cheered. Mrs. Chen had brought a cake, Thomas had brought wine, and they celebrated into the evening with music and dancing and stories. Vera had never experienced anything like it, the sheer joy of being surrounded by people who wished her well, who accepted her presence, who celebrated her happiness. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and she tried to memorize every detail to hold onto forever. As the guests departed and night fell, Lucas and Vera stood on their porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. She leaned against him, his arm around her waist, and felt a peace so deep it was almost painful. "I never thought I would have this," she said quietly. "A home. A husband, people who care. I thought I would die alone in that river." "You did die," Lucas said. "Mara died. But Vera was born, and she got to have all the things Mara never could. That is not a small thing. No, it is everything." She turned to face him, reaching up to cup his cheek. "Thank you for finding me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me, for choosing to stay." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "Come on, Mrs. Payne, let us go to bed. Tomorrow we have a farm to run and a life to live." They went inside hand in hand, closing the door on the night and the world beyond. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever prejudices they would still face, whatever hardships life would throw at them, they would handle it together. Vera was no longer alone. She had Lucas, she had the farm, she had a community slowly learning to accept her. She had a new life and a new name, and she intended to make the most of every single day. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The farm prospered under their joint efforts, producing more each season than Lucas had managed alone. They expanded, adding more fields and more animals, and hired help during harvest season, first Thomas, who became a close friend, and eventually others who were willing to work alongside an orc without complaint. Vera became something of a bridge between the orc clans and the human settlements in the region. Word had spread of the Stone Ridge clan's decision to seek peace, and other clans began to tentatively reach out. Vera, with her unique position as someone who belonged to both worlds and neither, was able to facilitate conversations, negotiate small treaties, and help build understanding where before there had been only suspicion and violence. It was slow work, and there were setbacks. A skirmish between a raiding party and a militia nearly destroyed all the progress. A prominent merchant in town tried to organize a petition to have Vera expelled, claiming her presence attracted trouble. But each time something threatened to undo their efforts, Lucas and Vera and their growing circle of allies would rally, would push back, would refuse to let fear and hatred win. 5 years after the day Vera had stumbled onto Lucas's porch, half dead and nameless, she stood in the same spot, very much alive and very much herself. The farm looked different now, bigger, more prosperous, with a new barn and an expanded house to accommodate the children who played in the yard. 2 of them, a boy and a girl, both with green-tinged skin and tusks that were still barely more than nubs, both shrieking with laughter as they chased chickens who wanted nothing to do with being caught. The sight of them never failed to make Vera's heart swell with pride and fierce protective love. She had not thought orc-human children were possible, had not dared to hope for offspring when she and Lucas married. But nature had surprised them, and now they had a family that embodied everything they had fought for, proof that 2 worlds could not just coexist, but could blend into something new and beautiful. Lucas came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "They are going to traumatize those poor chickens," he said, but his tone was amused rather than concerned. "They will tire themselves out soon enough. Then we can have a peaceful dinner." "Peaceful, right? Have you met our children?" Vera laughed and turned in his arms to kiss him. Even after 5 years, the simple act of kissing her husband still felt miraculous, still sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I regret nothing," she said. "Neither do I, not a single thing." He pulled back to look at her, his brown eyes soft. "Do you ever think about the clan? About how things might have been different, sometimes, but not with regret. If I had stayed, I would be dead or still living a half-life of violence and running. Instead, I am here, with you, with them." She gestured to the children. "I have everything I never knew I wanted." "How could I regret that?" "You could not. Just like I could never regret finding a half-dead orc woman on my doorstep and deciding to help her instead of turning her away." "Best decision you ever made," Vera said with a grin. "Second best," Lucas corrected. "The best was asking you to stay. I proposed to you, remember, details." He kissed her again, then called out to the children. "Lena, Marcus, come inside. Time to wash up for dinner." The children groaned in protest but obeyed, abandoning their chicken chasing to run toward the house. They burst through the door in a whirlwind of energy and noise, and the evening descended into the cheerful chaos of family life, washing hands, setting the table, everyone talking over each other about their day. As they sat down to eat, Vera looked around the table at her family, at the home she had built with Lucas, and felt gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She had been declared dead by those who should have loved her. She had been left to die alone. But Lucas Payne had given her a new life and a new name, and in doing so, he had given her everything. Vera reached across the table and took Lucas's hand, squeezing it gently. He squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was a world of love and understanding and shared history. They had come so far from that desperate night when she had stumbled onto his porch, wounded and nameless. They had built something real and lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. Marcus was telling a story about a frog he had found in the garden, his words tumbling over each other in his excitement. Lena was stealing bites of bread from his plate when she thought no one was watching. Lucas was trying to referee while also eating his own dinner. It was messy and loud and imperfect and absolutely perfect. This was her life now. This was her family, and she would never take a single moment of it for granted. After dinner, after the children had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Lucas and Vera stood in the doorway of their bedroom, looking out the window at the moonlit fields. The night was clear and cool, the stars bright overhead, and the world was quiet except for the gentle sounds of the farm settling for sleep. "You think they will have an easier time of it?" Vera asked. "Our children. Do you think the world will be kinder to them than it was to us?" "I think we are making it kinder," Lucas said. "Every day we live like this, every day we prove that love is stronger than hate, we are changing the world a little bit. It might not be enough for them to live without prejudice entirely, but it will be better than what we faced. And they will have us to guide them, to teach them how to stand tall and be proud of who they are." "Half orc, half human, fully loved," Vera said, repeating the phrase she had taken to using when people asked about the children. "Exactly. They are not defined by what they are. They are defined by who they choose to be, just like you, just like me." They went to bed then, curling up together in the familiar comfort of their shared space. Vera traced the scars on Lucas's arms, old wounds from his soldier days, and he traced the scar on her shoulder where the arrow had struck. They were marked by their pasts, but not limited by them. They had chosen a different path, a harder path perhaps, but one that had led to happiness and fulfillment. As sleep began to claim her, Vera thought about the girl she had been, angry, frightened, convinced she would die for speaking truth to power. That girl had died in the river, drowned by her clan's judgment and her own despair. But from that death had come something new, something stronger. Vera had been born in the mud and the blood and the fear, and she had grown into someone who could love and be loved, who could build instead of destroy, who could hope instead of merely survive. Lucas's breathing evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep, and Vera held him close, grateful beyond words for this man who had seen past the surface to the person beneath. He had given her everything: safety, acceptance, love, a family, a future, and she had given him the same in return. The story could have ended a dozen different ways. She could have died in the river, could have been turned away from the farmhouse, could have been killed by her clan when they found her, could have been driven out by the townsfolk. But instead, through luck and courage and the simple decision to be kind when it would have been easier to be cruel, she and Lucas had written a different ending. They had written a love story, against all odds and expectations. They had proven that the lines people drew between orc and human, between acceptable and forbidden, between us and them, were not as solid as everyone believed. They had crossed those lines and found not enemies on the other side, but partners, lovers, family. And so Vera Payne, who had once been declared dead and left to die, fell asleep in the arms of her husband in the house they had built together, surrounded by the life they had created. She was not dead. She was vibrantly, gloriously alive, and she intended to stay that way for a very long time. The moon moved across the sky, casting silver light through the window, and the farm slept peacefully under its glow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new opportunities to build on what they had created. But tonight was for rest, for peace, for the simple contentment of being exactly where they belonged. Vera's last thought before sleep took her completely was that she had been given the rarest of gifts, a second chance, and she had not wasted it. She had taken that chance and turned it into something beautiful, something lasting, something worth every hardship and heartache along the way. She was Vera Payne, wife and mother and farmer and bridge builder. She was no longer defined by the clan that had rejected her or the circumstances that had nearly killed her. She was defined by the choices she made, the people she loved, and the life she built with her own two hands, and that life was very, very good. As autumn came around again, marking 6 years since Vera had arrived at the farm, she found herself reflecting more and more on how far they had come. The children were growing quickly, Marcus already helping with small chores around the farm, Lena showing an uncanny ability with the animals. The community had mostly accepted them, and the few holdouts who still grumbled about orcs and half-breeds were outnumbered by those who simply saw the Paynes as their neighbors. The real change came when representatives from 3 different orc clans approached Lucas and Vera about establishing a formal trading post on their land. It would be neutral territory, a place where orcs and humans could meet to exchange goods and negotiate peaceful settlements. The idea was ambitious, potentially dangerous, and exactly the kind of challenge Vera had been looking for. Lucas was skeptical at first, worried about the safety of their children and the farm they had built. But Vera convinced him that they could not stop at just their own happiness, that they had a responsibility to use their unique position to help others find the same peace they had found. After long discussions and careful planning, they agreed. The trading post was built at the edge of their property, a large structure with separate entrances for those who still could not quite stomach walking side by side with their former enemies. It was not perfect, and there were incidents, arguments that turned into scuffles, deals that fell through because old hatreds flared up, moments when it seemed like the whole enterprise would collapse. But it held. Week by week, month by month, the trading post became a fixture in the region. Orcs would come down from the mountains with furs and herbs and crafted weapons. Humans would bring grain and metalwork and textiles. The exchanges were stiff and formal at first, both sides eyeing each other with suspicion, but gradually, cautiously, people began to relax. A joke would be shared, a compliment given on the quality of goods. Children from both sides would play together while their parents conducted business, unaware that they were supposed to be enemies. Vera watched it all with a sense of pride and wonder. She had helped create this. Her survival, her marriage to Lucas, their children, all of it had paved the way for this moment, for this possibility of a different future. The work was far from over. There were still clans that refused to participate, still towns that wanted nothing to do with orcs, still people on both sides who clung to hatred as if it were a precious heirloom. But progress was being made, and that was enough. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted down from the trees surrounding the farm, Vera stood at the trading post watching a young orc woman haggle with a human merchant over the price of a beautifully tooled leather saddle. The orc was getting the better of the deal, and the merchant knew it, but he was grinning anyway, clearly enjoying the challenge. In the corner, Marcus was showing an orc boy how to skip stones in the small pond behind the post, both of them laughing when the stones sank instead of skipped. Lucas came up beside her as he so often did and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Looks like another successful market day," he said. "It does. I never imagined this when I first came here. I was just trying to survive. Now look at what we have built. We built it together. Could not have done it without you." He kissed her temple, a gesture so casual and affectionate it made her smile. "I have been thinking." "That is usually dangerous," Vera teased. "I have been thinking that we should expand the house. Add more rooms, we might need them." Vera turned to look at him, her heart suddenly beating faster. "Why would we need more rooms? The children have their own space and we have ours." Lucas's grin was equal parts nervous and excited. "Well, you have been sick in the mornings lately, and I have noticed other signs. So I thought maybe, just maybe, we should prepare for the possibility that our family is about to grow again." Vera's hand went to her stomach automatically, and the realization hit her like a wave. She had been tired, yes, and queasy, and her body had felt different in subtle ways she had attributed to stress or changes in the weather. But now that Lucas said it, now that the possibility was voiced, she knew he was right. She was pregnant again. "Another baby," she whispered, the words filled with awe. "Another baby," Lucas confirmed. "Are you happy about it?" "Happy, Lucas. I am terrified and thrilled and overwhelmed and yes, so incredibly happy." She threw her arms around him and hugged him tight, laughing and crying at the same time. "Another child. Another piece of our future." They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the market bustled around them, while their children played and the world went on turning. Another baby meant more sleepless nights, more work, more worry. But it also meant more love, more laughter, more proof that what they had built was real and lasting and growing. That evening, after the market had closed and the visitors had departed, they gathered the children and told them the news. Marcus cheered and immediately declared he would teach the baby everything he knew. Lena demanded to know if it would be a brother or sister, and pouted when they explained it was too early to tell. The family celebrated with a special dinner and extra dessert, and the house rang with noise and joy until late into the night, when the children were finally asleep, exhausted by excitement. Lucas and Vera sat by the fire, hands entwined, and talked about the future in soft voices. They made plans for the new baby, for the expansion of the house, for the continued growth of the trading post. They talked about the challenges ahead and the dreams they still harbored. And through it all, woven into every word and every silence, was the unshakable foundation of their love for each other. I used to think love was a weakness, Vera said at one point. My clan taught that emotions made you vulnerable, that caring too much would get you killed, but they were wrong. Love is the strongest thing I have ever known. It has carried us through everything. Love and stubbornness, Lucas added with a smile. We are both too stubborn to give up when things get hard. That too, but mostly love. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for loving me when I was unlovable. For seeing a future when I could only see an ending. For giving me everything I never dared to want. You were always lovable, Vera. You just needed someone to show you. And as for giving you things, you have given me far more in return. You gave me purpose, family, a reason to believe in something bigger than myself. I am the lucky one. We are both lucky, Vera said firmly. Lucky to have found each other, lucky to have been brave enough to try, lucky to have built this life. They sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the fire burn down to embers, content in each other's presence. The road from that desperate night 6 years ago to this moment had been long and often difficult, but it had been worth every step. Vera had died in that river, drowned by rejection and violence and despair. But she had been reborn on a muddy riverbank, given a second chance by a kind-hearted farmer who had refused to let her face death alone. That farmer had become her husband, her partner, her best friend and greatest love. Together they had created a family, a home, a community, and a future that defied everything their respective peoples had taught them was possible. They had written their own story, one that said love could bridge any divide, that kindness could overcome prejudice, that hope was stronger than hate. And now they would add another chapter to that story, another child to carry forward the legacy they had begun. It was more than Vera had ever dreamed possible, more than she had ever thought she deserved. But she was done questioning her worth, done doubting her right to happiness. She had fought for this life, had earned every moment of peace and joy it contained. As they prepared for bed, Lucas suddenly stopped and turned to her. Do you ever regret the name I gave you, Vera? Do you ever wish you had kept your original name or chosen something different? Vera considered the question seriously. No, Mara was who I was before. Vera is who I became. The name represents my rebirth, my new beginning. It is the perfect name because it marks the moment my real life started, the moment you decided I was worth saving. You were always worth saving, Lucas said softly. I just wish you had known it sooner. I know it now, and that is what matters. They climbed into bed, and as Vera drifted toward sleep, she thought about names and identities and the power of being seen for who you truly were. Her clan had declared her dead, had erased her from their songs and their memories. But Lucas had given her a new name, a new life, and in doing so, had given her permission to become someone she never could have been within the confines of clan law and tradition. She was Vera Payne, and that name meant everything. It meant survival and rebirth. It meant love and family. It meant peace and possibility. It was a name she would carry with pride for the rest of her days, and a name she would pass down to her children along with the story of how it came to be, the story of how their mother died and was reborn, how their father saw past fear and prejudice to offer kindness, how love conquered hate and built something beautiful from the ashes of war. It was a good story, a true story, and it was still being written, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love and courage at a time. As winter approached once more, Vera's pregnancy became obvious, and the community responded with an outpouring of support that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. Mrs. Chen knitted baby clothes. Thomas and his wife brought over supplies and offered to help with heavy chores as Vera's energy waned. Even some of the orc traders at the market brought gifts, traditional charms for safe childbirth. herbs to ease discomfort, and blessings in the old language that made Vera's eyes sting with grateful tears. The baby was born on a snowy January night, delivered with the help of a midwife who had initially refused to assist with a half-orc birth, but had been convinced by Mrs. Chen's stern lecture about professional duty. It was a difficult labor, longer and harder than the previous two, and there were moments when Vera feared something would go wrong. But Lucas never left her side, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and telling her she was strong, she was brave, she could do this. And she did. Just before dawn, as the first gray light of morning crept through the window, their third child entered the world with a lusty cry. A girl, small but healthy, with green-tinged skin and tiny tusks and the most beautiful dark eyes Vera had ever seen. "She is perfect," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion as he held his new daughter. "She is ours," Vera replied, which was the same thing. They named her Hope, because that was what she represented: hope for the future, hope for peace, hope that the world their children would inherit would be kinder and more accepting than the one their parents had known. Marcus and Lena were enchanted by their new sister, fighting over who got to hold her and hovering protectively around the cradle Lucas had carved in preparation for her arrival. Life settled into a new rhythm, adjusted for a newborn's needs. Vera spent her days nursing and caring for Hope while managing the household, and Lucas took over more of the farm work with help from hired hands. The trading post continued to thrive under the management of a committee that included both orc and human representatives, and the flow of goods and goodwill kept growing. As Hope's first birthday approached, Vera found herself thinking back over the 7 years since her rebirth. 7 years since she had washed up on Lucas's land, half dead and nameless. 7 years of building and growing and fighting for every scrap of happiness. It had not been easy. There had been setbacks and heartbreaks, moments when it seemed like the prejudice would never fade, like they would never be fully accepted. But looking at her 3 children playing in the yard, at the farm that prospered through their joint efforts, at the community that had slowly come to embrace them, Vera knew it had all been worth it. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt had led to this: a life rich with love and purpose, a family that embodied hope for a better future, a legacy that would outlast them both. She stood on the porch, Hope balanced on her hip, and watched the sun set over the fields. Lucas came up behind them, wrapping his arms around them both, and she leaned back into his embrace with a contented sigh. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had turned you away that night?" Lucas asked quietly. "Sometimes. I would have died, most likely. Either from the wound or from exposure. And you would still be here alone, working this farm by yourself with no one to come home to." "We saved each other," Lucas said. "You needed a home and I needed a reason to make this place more than just a house. We gave each other purpose. And love. Do not forget the love. Never. The love is the most important part." He kissed the top of her head, then Hope's, a gesture of affection that encompassed his whole family. "I love you, Vera Payne, more than I have words to express. I love you too, Lucas Payne. You gave me a new life and a new name, and I will spend every day I have left making sure you never regret it. I could never regret it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They stood there as the last light faded from the sky, a family united by love and forged in the fire of prejudice and fear. They had defied the expectations of their respective peoples, had built bridges where others saw only walls, had chosen hope over hate time and time again. And they had won. Not in some grand, dramatic fashion, but in the quiet, persistent way that really mattered: by living each day with integrity, by treating others with kindness, by refusing to let the darkness win. As stars began to appear overhead, Vera felt a peace settle over her that was almost spiritual in its depth. She had died in that river 7 years ago, but she had been reborn on this farm in this life with this man. She had been given a second chance, and she had not wasted it. She had built something beautiful and lasting, something that would endure long after she was gone. Her name was Vera Payne, and she was home. The end came gently, without fanfare or drama. The family continued to grow and prosper over the years that followed. Marcus grew into a strong young man who managed the trading post with wisdom beyond his years. Lena discovered a talent for healing and studied with the town doctor, eventually becoming a bridge between human and orc medicine. Hope grew up surrounded by love and acceptance, never knowing a world where her mixed heritage was seen as shameful rather than special. Lucas and Vera grew old together, their love deepening with each passing season. They watched their children marry and have children of their own, saw their grandchildren playing in the same yard where their own children had played, and knew that the legacy they had built would continue. The trading post expanded into a permanent settlement, a place where orcs and humans lived and worked side by side, and the idea that such coexistence was impossible became a relic of a darker time. On a warm summer evening, 40 years after Vera had stumbled onto Lucas's porch, they sat together on that same porch, watching the sun set one more time. Their hands were wrinkled now, their hair gray, their movements slow with age. But their love was as strong as ever, undiminished by time or hardship. "It has been a good life," Vera said softly. "The best life," Lucas agreed. "No regrets, not a single one. Only that we do not have another 40 years ahead of us. But I will take what we have left and be grateful for every moment. As will I." They sat in comfortable silence, content in each other's presence as they had been for 4 decades. The farm spread out before them, golden in the evening light, and the sounds of their grandchildren's laughter drifted up from the yard. It was perfect, this moment, this life they had built from nothing but determination and hope and love. When Vera closed her eyes that night, curled up beside Lucas in the bed they had shared for so many years, she knew with absolute certainty that she had lived well. She had been given a second chance, and she had made it count. She had loved deeply, raised a family, changed the world in small but meaningful ways. She had been Mara, declared dead by those who should have loved her. But she had become Vera, brought to life by a man who had seen her worth when no one else would. And that was a story worth living, worth remembering, worth passing down through the generations. It was a story of death and rebirth, of fear transformed into courage, of hate overcome by love. It was her story, and Lucas's story, and it would echo long after they were both gone, a testament to the power of choosing kindness when the world demanded cruelty. Vera slept peacefully that night and every night after, secure in the knowledge that she had been loved, had loved in return, and had lived a life that mattered. And when the end finally came, years later, she went peacefully, surrounded by family, knowing that her story would never truly end as long as there were people willing to believe in the possibility of something better. Her name was Vera Payne, and she had lived well.